So we are team number 8. I'm Zach. This is Paroma. That's Lucy and Kevin. And we're very excited that you've given us the opportunity to follow up on our original plan. We're going to go through some stuff that recaps on what we did before, and then build and go beyond that and really get to the point where you feel like you're moving on to your implementation. Because the good news is we've already begun. We're in the planning stages. So this is the contents. We're going to go through revenue and share. We're going to go through a stakeholder map and refinement of the target market. And then we'll go through the go-to-market plan, which is really the core of this presentation. So my feeling from the questions that we got in the early presentation was that you guys were relatively comfortable with our revenue projections of $308 million in 2012. Again, I'd be happy to take questions if that's not the case on any of the detail behind this model. But I think it sounds like what you're more interested in from a follow-up standpoint is the share. So again, this is the total market, 308 million going to 475 million in the 5th out year. We are standing by our 5-year peak share of 40%. I know you guys asked us to revisit it, but we feel really good about this. We've developed a scaling trend for how this will play out over time. And during the questions, we can get out what these mean from a share standpoint. This is dollars. So 190 million out in the 5th year, in the 4th year, more like 130, et cetera. In the very beginning of sort of the first year, that's basically now, you're starting from 0, obviously. So you're getting sort of to 20% share halfway there in between years 2 and 3 approximately. And again, why do we stand by this? Our experience is that across a number of products and markets, 40% is the typical peak share for a second to market entrant. But beyond that, we think you can get there earlier than we might expect otherwise because of your scale. You just have more access to residential customers.
Talking a little bit about the stakeholder map, it all begins with active, aware, and latent publics. Active publics are the ones that know what's going on and they're actively engaging with the agency. Aware publics are aware of what's going on, but they're not really engaging. And then latent publics are often left field. They have no idea what's happening. So talking a little bit about this, we see that community leaders are a big one, especially in the more urban markets where people rely on the USPS more, and especially in poorer markets. Customers and councils, selected influential stakeholders, some like focus groups, for example, within the agency, federal regulators, industry experts and trade groups, the executives of the agency as well as its board, current employees, retirees, and any unions that will obviously have a hand in being trained in this program later on. Congress is a big one. Obviously, U.S. has to focus heavily on that. It's where the agency derives much of its support, and it's what we'll be talking about later on in this presentation when we talk about where we're focusing the 4 steps of our program. Okay, talking a little bit about breaking these publics down into in terms of influence and impact. So high influence and high impact. A significant effort should be made to satisfy this group. So these are people like the marketing management team within the agency, Congress, as I mentioned, federal regulators, and the media, who will be reaching out to extensively to position this program as a public service going forward. High influence and low impact. These are people to whom an effort should be made on a more limited basis. So people like community leaders, trade groups, employee advocates, and the active publics who are already taking an interest in the organization. Low influence and high impact talks about keeping them adequately informed with close symmetrical communication between the agency and the public. So these are people like aware publics, bulk customers, and municipal leaders like mayors and council members and so forth in the markets that we're targeting. And finally, low influence and low impact, we have to monitor for consideration and consultation later on, but we're not really concerned with extensively at this time. So things like latent publics and so forth.
So I'd like to talk to you about the target market in terms of products. So as we had told you guys in our previous presentation, we recommend targeting the mobile device market. First of all, because environmentally it has the most benefit. As you can see from these pie charts, the percentage of mobile devices that are returned and then reused or refurbished is much higher than laptop computers and desktop computers, so they have a they're much more sustainable in terms of the environment. And second of all, they have a lower cost in terms of your implementation plan, because, first of all, because you already have the infrastructure and networks in place to support the mailing program that we recommended, which we will talk about again later. And also because mobile phones are so small in size that there's less demand for shipping and handling space and also for warehouse space.
So briefly, we'll just talk about the implementation programs again. Again, as Lucy mentioned, our mobile return envelopes, then our personal pickup, our Dropbox, and our partnership program, and then we'll discuss these into further detail when we discuss the rollout phases.
Okay, so this is the core of our go-to-market roadmap. Essentially, we see a planning phase that we're already in. I think there's a lot of value in the work that we're presenting here as far as beginning the go-to-market process, and we hope you'll agree. But when we really hit the ground running is obviously launch, and that's with our core marketing programs. Later, initiatives to sort of scale up momentum, our partnerships, and we'll get into details, and then monitoring and evaluation are critical to sort of feedback and ensure that we're pulling through the business and gaining momentum over time. So I'm going to talk about planning sort of next steps. Cost analysis is a big one. We were asked to focus on revenue. We don't have a lot of data to work with in terms of cost analysis, although we believe costs are low for a lot of our programs for various reasons, related to the fact that you're sort of already out in the market, and most of the marketing materials that we're anticipating are low cost. But there are a number of things that we need to accomplish. We need to secure contracts, e-waste recycling vendors, to ensure the business is there. We need to look at our facilities, although we think we have some capacity there, as we talked about earlier today. We need to do some market research, RFP development for marketing materials, envelopes, drop boxes. We need to make those things eye-catching. Training, we can do it through a vendor or internal to get our employees to pull through grassroots efforts. Filtering e-waste, acquisition of talent or a company, so that we know which devices should be recycled in what way. And finally, a potential short-term debt load that will clear over time. It's just the reality of that you're probably not going to secure revenue up front with your vendor. And then, of course, lobbying to ensure budget appropriation from Congress is critical, as we outlined in the stakeholder map. Regarding market research, again, loud and eye-catching, training, we need to develop your materials and execute it. Business development, engage with potential partners.
So phase 2 of our program is a launch campaign, and we hope to have this out within the year. So 3 of our programs will be launched during launch campaign. Our primary program and our primary focus, as you have emphasized, is the mobile return envelopes, and we will be distributing the physical envelopes as well as program information to households, advertising and explaining this program and asking them to mail in their mobile devices. And the second program is the personal pickup program, which will be advertised along with the mobile return envelopes through the information packets, and there will be a launch of a user-friendly website in which customers can log on and set up a time where where your staff members can go and pick up their e-waste. And the third one is the Dropbox, which will be a collection box placed at all 1,000 or more than 1,000 of your retail locations, and employees will be asked to advertise these programs and the drop boxes to customers who are entering the retail locations.
We move to the next slide. I just would ask that we try to quicken the pace because I think we're probably going to miss our time.
So phase 3 is our Making Connections. This is where we're going to partner with existing handset manufacturers. We've selected 3 specifically, Nokia, Motorola, and HTC. We selected these 3 companies because they have a low rate in returns of their unused electronic devices. And new laws have required these companies to take care of the recycling costs, the collection, and to prevent e-waste, basically. So we'll be consulting, or you guys will be consulting with these companies to set up a mutual partnership. There'll be a low cost and incentive to both your agency and these companies to improve their awareness, and we'll move on, sorry.
And finally, monitoring and evaluation. And this should really continue throughout the campaign. We're going to start the campaign in 2014, and we'll be redesigning this roadmap that you see here in 2017 based on changing market conditions. But evaluation should always be top of mind. Talking a little bit about risks now, I'll just touch on a couple of these. Given how important Congress is to this program and to future funding for the agency, there's always the concern that Congress could view this revenue-generating measure as a stopgap. This is particularly true in rural districts that we don't target initially for this program. Secondly, I'll talk a little bit about limited understanding of how the public views the organization. So we don't understand yet what they've thought of us during your financial difficulties. We very much feel that your business is still based on the physical moment, and we're not quite sure whether or not that is waning. So next steps, again, we touched on this in our last presentation, other markets for downstream research, leveraging tablets as a new revenue source, expanding into commercial and government markets beyond your stated target of residential, and finally acquiring companies with talent with core competencies and filtering the e-waste for the secondary market versus recycling. So with that, we will take your questions.
Apologize for going over a little bit.
Great, thank you. So we're going to have about 5 to 10 minutes for questions.
I can start. First of all, great job. Very thorough. I can tell you guys really thought this through. Just one question that came to mind when I was the second to last slide. You mentioned that you would not be targeting rural districts initially. So I didn't hear earlier who you are
Geographic.
targeting.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What's the rollout plan if these rural districts are not targeted? Who is, and what's the timing?
So I guess I can start off
Go ahead.
with this. And our initial target is urban centers because we feel as if that's where the bulk of the population is. That's where the bulk of the e-waste will be. And it also means that there will be less shipping costs for you because the physical distances are less. And we thought about the concern about how Congress, one of your key stakeholders, would come in to influence this decision, but because Congress is separated based on population, so the urban centers would actually have the majority of the support anyway.
And beyond that, I mean, even in a rural area like upstate New York, I think of a city like Syracuse, there are still urban centers that are smaller than New York, Dallas, Los Angeles, things that immediately come to mind that we would hit. It's just a question of, as you launch, focusing on the areas where your costs will be most efficient, and then expanding over time.
I had a question. I know you didn't have time to elaborate on the pushback from the advocates. Earlier we were looking at the unions as a group. I assume that bullet pertains to labor unions.
Yes.
Could you talk about what you expect by way of pushback and any potential strategies you have for us to avoid that challenge or mitigate the risk?
Sure. Well, there's always the concern that the additional training that we give to them will be received poorly, and that they'll be asked to do something that they might perceive to not be their job. Right now, your agency is in a state of transition, and we feel that everyone needs to step up and play their part. And we feel like this is the way that you can prove to your employees that you're innovating and that you can be around for the long term. So we feel like that we feel as though they should be as invested in this program as you are, if not more, because this leads directly to the future fiscal health of the organization and their fiscal health. Okay,
So, good point. But then the primary mechanism of training the employees, I think, was e-training, if I caught that right from your slide, right?
correct,
Is
and
that
we
primary
would either
delivery?
outsource that to a vendor or do it internally.
So you talked about rolling out the mobile return envelopes, and that you were going to print them off and distribute them to homes. Did you consider the upfront costs? What would it cost to sort of develop that kind of campaign where you're producing material and then giving it away in the hopes that some of them will take it up? What is sort of the initial cost of doing that kind of rollout strategy?
Well, we tried to discuss the cost of printing out envelopes, and we thought it would be a minimum cost because we're doing this in bulk. We're sending this out to all urban centers, so it would be really, it would be a cost at first, but we're hoping with the returns that we receive and through our advertising and awareness campaigns, we'll be receiving revenue within that. So that's how we approach that method.
I think I would just add that we're thinking of obviously electronic devices, they need a packaged envelope. If you go into a store, that costs a couple dollars, maybe $4 for the size that we would need initially, focusing on mobile devices again. If you have 3 phones, not a huge envelope. But we also expect that with the amount that we'd be buying, given our scale, the cost per unit would be very low. And this is just an initial, this isn't necessarily consistently done, this is sort of an upfront promotional program to get people involved, and then we hope to pull through other channels downstream. So cost per
So
unit, we
it's
hope
not
is low.
universal, it's not gonna be universal in the target market, it's gonna be select households or?
Like we said, I think urban center concentration, and again, the idea is that we'll have it in store, we'll have people that can schedule it downstream, so there's less waste downstream, and also with the program, with the partnerships, that will establish sort of a different channel where people go in, they buy their next phone, they give their old phone, there's coupons, et cetera.
Thank you.
I saw on one of the slides you talked about a change in law requiring large manufacturers to recycle. So I imagine there'd be some pushback essentially against that. So I was just wondering if you had thought about that pushback from companies that may not want to bear the costs of recycling, and sort of how you would mitigate that.
I think these laws have already they've already started to change. It's not something we're going to require all states to adhere to, but I think the information was given that a few states like New York has already passed these laws. They're not enforced very well, but over time with the gradual increase of, or the exponential increase of e-waste, we're going to see more enforcement. So we'd like to have this program set in place and implemented as soon as possible to help these partnering companies.
I would also remind you that our market size shows that there's already a large opportunity there, so the material's already moving. The challenge is just to get it to come to us, to you.
I did have one question for you. So first of all, great presentation. You did a nice job of the stakeholder management map, because obviously for us, one of our main concerns is our congressional colleagues. So aside from the approach of the stakeholder map, could you share with us any thoughts that you guys had about what's the key messaging to come? What's the issue du jour that you think we're going to wrestle with them the most on in rolling this out, or gaining their buy-in for rollout?
In terms of your congressional colleagues, I think the problem that they might see is that this is merely a stopgap measure. This does not solve the problem. They might view the revenue as less than anticipated. Again, we don't exactly know your current revenue or your targets, so I can't really speak to that. However, I would say that they're primarily concerned with whether or not your agency will be around for the long haul to help the people in their districts that are most vulnerable. And I think if we continue to push the message that we're keeping it simple, yet we're still being innovative for the publics that matter most, I think that's the primary message that we need to send out, and that will be most effective.
Thank you.
Okay. Cool. Any last questions? Thank you.
Good job.
Nice
Thank you
job.
for
Great
your
job.
time.
Great job.